Hello and welcome to episode 166 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Just a couple of regular guys drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular, the online client MTG Arena.
That's right, and we're finally talking about a new set. You know, we took a little bit of time off, but we're getting to some new stuff. Today's
Yes.
all about Duskmourn, House of Horrors, and let's get right into it. But of course, each week we bring a beer, we drink it, we rate it on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. So, with that, Jeff, what is on tap this week?
Hey, so this week we're diving into a brewery that's called Cartwright Springs. I recently went back to visit Ottawa, my family there, and this is a brewery that I'd never heard about. My friend just kind of brought it up when I was there and was like, should we go? And I was like, hell yeah, we should go. But it's a little bit outside of Ottawa. It was about 40-ish minute drive. And it's basically this like little brewery that has like a almost like a aluminum roof kind of thing
Oh, sure.
in the middle of what is essentially a campgrounds. So you can go camp there. They have
Oh,
like lots where people to camp, and then they have this brewery that's run by this guys and his family, and all like their seating is actually just like Muskoka chairs around campfires and various little spots around. There's like a swing set and hammocks and
hmm.
a place to go play like volleyball and stuff. It was actually really cool. Just kind of a brewery in the middle of nowhere, and you go camp there and you buy beers. You have a great time. Um, and so we went there, we had a beer, and I was like, I just want everything that you
Everything?
have. I
Oh,
want
it's
two of
so.
everything, and gonna take those all home and we'll do them on the show. I have tried some of them, I have not tried all of them, but I wanted to start with this one because this one is Leo Lager. So it's named after his son, Leo,
Oh.
who in I didn't get all the details, but it designed this recipe, allegedly, his son. And his son is 6 years old. And so that's why this is 6%. And I think it's might actually be six IBUs as well. But
Oh, that's funny.
it's a lager. Um so this one it just had to start with, the brewmaster's ultimate creation. And by brewmaster I of course mean 6-year-old Leo. And this is his lager.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I always love beers that are just like the brewery, like this. So if you don't see this on YouTube, the can has basically the art for the brewery, but all the cans are the same thing. They're just like blue with this, and they just have the sticker over it that say the title of the beer.
Yeah,
It, it it just feels like they're putting everything into the beer. You know what I mean? We talk about marketing a lot, but I'm just excited for this because
right?
it just
Yeah. I
it
mean,
seems so cool.
it's a little annoying because when I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do this one tonight," I had to go and check every single
That's
can
true.
but I actually got on the second try, so no problem there. But even funnier thing about this one is that under the sticker that says the name is a different beer name that's printed on there.
Oh, really?
So they they clearly bought like a whole bunch of cans of one beer and then they bought too many or something, and now they just make all of their beers stickers for all of their beers and put them
And then,
over their first beer that they bought all these cans for.
oh, I love
Uh,
it. That's funny.
yeah, if you peel it off, I think it says I'd tap that Pilsner.
Oh. Oh, all right, Jeff. Well, do you want to crack these open and get going?
Which, before you get too excited, listeners, they didn't have that.
Ah.
We don't have one of those. We have a bunch of cans that say that, but none of them are actually that beer.
Uh, all right, Jeff. Well, I'm excited. Here we go.
Let's crack it.
Ooh, with that, we have some magic news. Um, Duskmour is coming out this weekend, basically. It's the pre-release, and so then essentially next week is it's out. We're playing Duskmourn. I unfortunately am going to be in Japan, so I will not be actually partaking in Magic for a little bit when that's happening, um, until kind of I get back. But it kind of snuck up on us. Bloomborough came out like from July into August, and this is September to October. So that's a really quick turnaround, like for standard sets. There's always like, other things that are kind of pushing out of the way, like Modern Horizon 3 pushing OTJ out of the way and stuff like that. But this feels very like they're the timing is interesting. I wonder if they kind of changed the release schedule so that you could get like all of October because it's so spooky. They didn't want this to come out like at the end, or maybe it's because of the World Championship is like the in like the later half of October. They want to give people a couple weeks with the set and it not be stale. I'm not really sure, but
Could be. Um, yeah, I'm not sure either why they
hmm.
would do it. The only thing I do want to say is, they have Magic in Japan, right?
I yes, I know. So originally I did want to play. I'll talk about this probably when I get back, of course. But I really wanted to play Magic in Japanese. More so, like I'm probably not speaking Japanese because I don't know how to speak Japanese.
Mhm.
But playing with people that don't speak English, and then we can only communicate through Magic cards.
Yeah.
However, I thought doing a pre-release like that sounded like a really bad idea.
Yeah. It would
So
just yeah.
my timing isn't really great for it because I don't know the cards well enough, and you already make a ton of mistakes at pre-release anyway, even if it's in your native language.
For
That
sure.
playing it with a bunch of people I can't even like apologize to correctly, um, like explain my reasoning, might not be the best idea. So I might have to skip out on that. Um, but we do have some other news. I guess it's not really that exciting, but there's a huge arena update. It was gigantic. It was 9 GB on my computer, and it happened like later in the week. It wasn't on the normal Tuesday. I think it had. I had to do it on Friday, but it could have been earlier than that. But like, I don't really know what it did. They just said that they're like fixing a bunch of issues, like back issues. I don't know.
Jeez.
It, they always talk about how the arena code is like spaghetti and it's all like wound up and screwed up. So I'm assuming that this is just kind of fixing a bunch of problems that they had, but it wasn't implementing anything. It just felt just ginormous. It was
I mean, that's a huge update. Like,
yeah.
I haven't actually downloaded it yet, and I'm gonna have to go check how much storage is available on my PC because uh, I have mine like separated. I have a Linux and a Windows run it, so I don't have that much storage on my Windows, and so
Hmm.
I'm like, maybe I
Move
gotta a
some stuff
lot a little
around.
more storage over here
Uh,
because I didn't realize Arena was gonna take 125 gigabytes on its own or whatever it's gonna be.
Jesus, it's so crazy. But anyway, I don't know what it did, but I hope it does make things run smoother. That's what I would hope. But you, who knows? I'm sure there will be a bunch of things that break when Duskmourn comes out
That's the thing,
because
right? We're gonna download this massive update, and it's actually gonna break things for us.
mhm,
It's not gonna make the experience better for us. It's probably good to make the experience better for future development,
yeah,
which I guess indirectly helps us, but it's not gonna like feel like this update was worth it
no, we probably
for
won't.
us.
It's the normal WotC thing where like you won't really see anything happen for another 2 years. Um,
Yeah, this has happened to me enough times where there's a
yeah,
massive update. I'm like, oh, that must mean big changes. And then I sign in. It's like the same, except something that used to work doesn't work now.
yeah, basically. And you're like, huh, that's weird.
Yeah,
Um, but anyway, Arena does the things it does. Um, anyway, Jeff, let's get right into things. This episode, we have some good stuff going on. As usual, we're talking about our the acquisition period, so our no pass lists, as well as the new tradition of Pack Zero Pick One. Which, if you don't know much about that, stay tuned. We will get more in depth about it very soon. But as always, new sets coming out, new cards. We're drafting a lot. What is one of our like golden rules and most important things on the arena regulars?
yeah. So one thing we always do before we start drafting a set like crazy is set up something called a no pass list. Now, the theory behind this is pretty straightforward, but I think it's kind of important. And the idea is if you create a list ahead of time of cards that you absolutely want for constructed. If you only play limited, you can ignore what we're going to say here.
Hmm.
But if you play any constructed at all, write down the cards that you want for constructed decks. And then when you're drafting, always take those cards, even if there's a better card for your deck in the pack. This does a couple of things. The first is, we're just pro rare drafting here. You'll hear a lot of people hate on it because it's not the like technically correct thing to do in a pro tour or something. But that's not where we are. We're in a collection building phase of our game. And I actually believe the value of taking like a card you're going to play in a deck is higher than a marginal chance to like have a slightly higher win, like chance of winning one of the games in your draft. Like there are a lot of good cards at the end of a draft. So when you rare draft, you're kind of bumping the 23rd card for like the 22nd one or whatever. And I just don't think that that's as important as a guaranteed wild card, essentially. Like wild cards are the name of the game in Arena, and it's just better to essentially take the wild card because, you know, that's the real currency. That's the real
Yeah.
currency of Arena is wild cards.
It's very true. But I did want to say that in the past we've had kind of quite extensive lists. Sometimes they can be quite large. I know mine specifically for Outlaws of the Junction was way too large, mainly because there
Yeah.
were like three bonus sheets in that set,
Yeah, there's a lot
um,
of cool stuff.
which was really cool, but also really confusing. It's hard to narrow down exactly the things that you need for standard. Also, we started this rule before we had play boosters. So now you will often see packs that have two or three rares in it. Um, so in that situation, it's like, am I picking the card that's good for my collection or this huge, awesome bomb that's perfect for my deck? Um, all of those, obviously, you'll have to go on a case by case basis. But the point of the list is just so you don't have to think about whether you're going to draft the rares or not. You have already made a decision and it makes it easier. You have to use less brain power, splitting your brain between whether you would like to get a card for your constructed collection or for your draft deck, which, of course, the majority of the time you want it for your draft deck because you're drafting, obviously. But, make it a little bit easier. Your brain has to do a lot of stuff in Magic. Lighten the load. Prepare.
Especially at the beginning of a format when you're still reading all the cards. Like
Hmm.
my favorite part of the no pass list is that I just click something and then
Hmm.
I just sit and I read some of the cards
Yeah,
to make sure I know what they do, right? Because
exactly.
it's so hard to like, oh, I'm gonna read all of these uncommons. All right, which one's the best one? Is that better than murder? Is that better than this? Like, I don't know, this one, because I ran out of time.
Yeah,
Um, this is just like, oh, takes a load off. Click the rare that you know what it does and you know you want it, and you know that's what you're gonna take. And then you like read some of the other uncommons, get used to the art, get used to everything, and it just takes that stress out of the early packs in
it's so true. It is. It is very true. And the easiest thing, but we put on our lists every single time, if it's applicable, is if there is a rare dual land cycle, we take them. Just because for standard, which is our primary format on Arena, you need lands, and lands make your decks work a lot better. When you make budget decks, don't skimp on the lands. The land should be one of the things you invest in the most. And so we really think that taking any of these rare land cycles, in this set we have 5 lands, which is kind of nice because at some of the other sets we've had 10, and that's a lot. So just having 5, it's all the verges. They're all allied colored dual lands. They tap for the one color, and then if you control um, a basic land type of either of the two colors, it will tap for the second color.
Yeah,
So
these ones are really good too. So these are a no-brainer. I think the closest I ever came to not having rare jewels on my no pass list was the snarls.
yeah,
And even then I put them on because I was like, you know what, whatever. I might want these at some point. Just take them, and
yeah, but they are horrible.
they're so bad. They're
Ugh.
so bad.
Like this is such a better design. That's actually funny that you brought up snarls because snarls are very similar to this, where it's like, hey, here's a dual land, but it benefits you for having basic land types in your hand. This is a dual land that cares
Bad
about them
idea.
on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So it's like it's still a untapped land that taps for mana when you need it to, but it can tap for additional color if you have the land types. I just think snarls are they get me so mad. Um,
Snarls are bad design
yeah.
and bad cards.
Before we moved on, I did want to say that I don't have. There's one other rare land that I did not put on my list. Is called Valgavoth's Lair. So
Hmm.
it's a gold land. It's an enchantment land, which we don't really see very often. So that's kind of like the good part about it. It's an enchantment. It has hexproof, but it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, you choose a color, and it just taps for that color. So this is like an uncommon type of land. Like we see this ability in uncommons and like kind of shitty fixing lands. Like you just don't really like this card. You begrudgingly play it, but it happens to be an enchantment and have hexproof. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it helps in enchantment type decks, but the fact that it always comes into play tapped is just disgusting.
Yeah. That's tough because Enchantress decks tend to be, I don't know if aggro is necessarily the right word, but they want to
Hmm.
beat down and they want to win
Hmm.
relatively quickly. So a tap land is always pretty tough. Now, enchantment having an enchantment land is really powerful. And just in case people are wondering, the reason it has hexproof is so that you can't disenchant your opponent's land.
Yeah,
Like that
more
it's
things
just
hit
like
enchantments than yeah.
just a bad play pattern if people just have all this incidental, like really like enchantment removal is generally really cheap. So
Hmm.
yeah. But isn't there one that makes you sack an enchantment or something? Like
Yes,
can't we really nail people with that one?
yeah. It's was it pick your poison?
Mhm.
So it's just like hey, you have
One
to.
mana,
Hmm.
one mana Stone Rain. Sign me up. I hope people are putting this in their deck. I'll just
That actually
main deck pick your poisons
yeah,
all over the place.
that does sound hilarious. I think the idea is that like we've had artifact lands where they gave it indestructible for the same exact reason,
Yeah,
but giving an enchantment when hexproof seems a little more enchanty. I don't know. Anyway, more
yeah.
mystical, magical, but yeah,
And maybe I'll regret this, but I don't really care that this thing has hexproof. Like
I,
it's not like what's the tri land that has
oh,
hexproof
it is Lotus Petal, yeah,
or
or Lotus Petal,
Nightmare.
Lotus Fields, yeah.
Lotus Field, yeah, like that one's a real irritating land, but this one's like, would I ever want to blow this up? Like,
Use a
you
whole
know,
card like
it's like
that's
a mountain or whatever. It's a forest. This is a forest like 70% of the time and a plains 30% of the time.
yeah, yeah. I don't like it. Not a ugh,
It's not going to go in a deck that I'm going to play. So for
definitely not
you, it's more of a decision because you actually like Enchantress.
enchantments.
And
It's
I'm
true.
with you though. I think even if I was an Auras player, like this definitely is not for Auras. It's too slow.
Yeah, it's way too slow. I don't like tap lands. Moving on. Um, the other thing that often or you're looking at on your no pass list is the planeswalker, because sets only have one planeswalker now,
I love that,
which
by the way.
it's
That's
so great.
yeah.
It's what a good change.
It was getting out of hand there for a while.
It was just the sets where they had like 10 planeswalkers, just like oh, where it was like
And they
kind of
all had to be like pretty crappy because it's just too risky to
yeah, have a
have
bunch.
them all be good,
It's the just the play style having like less planeswalkers is just better. Like
especially for limited.
especially for limited, because that's when they're really warping. And so we both have Kaito on our list, which we talked
Yeah, I
about
like
last
Kaito.
week.
He's
But
good.
Kaito seems sweet and also just seems like a lot of fun and standard. Obviously, having planeswalkers in your collection is always great, but ones that you actually like think are super cool. This one's dope. Excited about it.
Same. Um, Up next for me, I talked about it last week as well, so there shouldn't be too many surprises here, but the eye. I
Hmm.
gotta have the eye on here. That's Abhorrent Oculus. Uh, Again, last week talked about this, so I won't go into too much detail, but this is exactly the type of card that I love. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh no, this is gonna like waylay my entire standard career for the duration of its legality.
For 3 years.
Yes. So I'm going to be trying to build shitty like Sultai self-build decks that are basically just doing like less powerful thing or Same love power level as just the mid-range deck, but I'm asking for a lot more to like go right to make that
your
happen.
your
But
setup cost is a lot bigger, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
but I
I'm
love it. That's my bread and butter is
I,
decks exactly that fit that description.
yes, and my bread and butter is stealing whatever deck you build.
Yeah, and being like, why doesn't this deck work? And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really weird play
It's like,
patterns. Let me
why
write
am
them down.
yeah, 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 yeah. I basically need a tutorial from Jeff to explain to me like why cards are in the deck or what they do. Once I get that, then I start to do quite a bit better. But before that, it could be pretty bad.
Yeah, so many like individually bad cards. Just like, what does this do?
Jeff would have to watch my stream and be like, no. So what you're supposed to do is this and then this. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's how that works. I didn't know that rules interaction. Um, So a card that's a little bit more my speed is a card that's on my no pass list, Entity Tracker, which is we were just talking about how I like Enchantress decks. This is two and a blue for a 2/3 human scout with flash. It has Eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, you draw a card. Um, the only thing I don't like about this card is that it costs 3 mana. Three is one too many. I'd much prefer this be two,
I mean,
but
this would be nuts at two.
I know, but all the ones I really like are two. You know, all my like, I really like the turn three. You play the two, and then you put something on top of it, or you play the two, and you have a something to either like a spell pierce or a protection spell or something. The three
Yeah,
mana makes it a little bit harder to squeeze in. You have to wait a little bit longer to be able to do stuff. But the
for sure.
flash helps a ton. Being able to set up a big turn when your opponent isn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think what you don't care about is the 2/3. Like you'd give up that power and toughness to shave a mana if you could. Like
for
I'd
sure.
play this as an 0/1 for two. That'd be sick.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would much prefer the O1. Um,
The
or
flash feels a little weird to me. Like I get that these things are removal lightning rods, and so the
mhm.
idea is to actually untap with it. But it feels like they were, when they set it up, it feels like they're trying to do when an enchantment is entering, you can like surprise flash this in to draw a card. It's like, how's that ever gonna happen? Like,
I get yeah, I
like usually the two abilities are somewhat synergistic, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I can surprise my opponent in response to an enchantment or being unlocked, and then I'm like, that it just doesn't work that way.
yeah.
Like,
I guess you could. The only thing is
I
you.
mean, you
You know,
can. It just
yeah.
I don't see it actually as a benefit to just casting this and then casting the enchantment.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe you just wait to see what your opponent does, and if they like.
There might be a corner case, but for the most part, if you're like me, you're wondering why it had flash. It's literally just because everyone kills these things on site, and so you might get to draw. Like you have a higher probability of just drawing a card off this thing.
I mean, to me, it just makes sense that you would just like wait to your opponent's end step, flash this in, and then get your
Yeah,
card on
that's
your
for
turn.
sure what it's for.
But also the really nice thing is it doesn't say once per turn, which is huge. So you at least get to draw as many cards as you want on that next turn, or I guess as many cards as you have enchantments, which is a big thing that they like to do now, which is like you draw a card once a turn, and so
Yeah.
happy it doesn't say that.
No, for
Uh,
this type of card to work, it can't. Like the Enchantress deck needs to do the thing where you're drawing like five extra cards every turn.
no, I know. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
they usually they just neuter all the cards so you can't even play them. So
That's true. They do usually do that.
yeah. Um, all right, Jeff, you got one more. I got one more.
Yes. So other than returning to my roots, because it really is a long time ago that I used to build these crazy all in on like Sultai self mill stuff. So other than returning to my roots on that front,
Hmm.
my motto for this set is Sack is back.
Mm.
And I
Zach,
know,
Zach, Zach is back.
yeah, Zach is back with Sack.
Hmm.
Um, oh, let's not say that. Uh, and I know everyone has been missing sacrifice decks and standard, so I'm hoping that they're back in a big way here. It's been so long since one has been good. Um, at least like two sets ago. And so I have my eye on Card called Undead Sprinter. This is not one we talked about last time, but it's black and a red for a 2/2 trample haste. It's a zombie. You may cast it from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died this turn. If you do, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. So, love it. I love it for, self-mill, sure, fine, but I'm not really gonna be in red, I don't think, for that
Hmm.
deck. But just for a sack deck, having like a 3/3 trample haste that comes back out of the yard, you just have to make sure that the stuff you want to sack is generally not a zombie. Um, but I think this is going to be really easy to facilitate, and this feels very Bloodghasty, where it's
Hmm.
like you sack this and then you sack the other one, and then you can cast this again, and like you just get this kind of recurring free creature that actually hits pretty hard, 3/3 trample haste.
It
And
does.
sack decks want to deal damage. Like they're generally aggro. I think of it as like a subtype of aggro for the most part. So you're kind of interested in the 2/2 trample haste for two. Like you wouldn't play that, but that gets it in the conversation. And then I think that ability is quite strong. So I'm into this card, and there are a few other sort of cards lurking around that make me think we might be able to build a nice low to the ground red black sack deck. Not, the least of which is certainly not the red black dual land. Having another
Hmm.
aggro, like another red black dual that aggro decks are interested in on top of Blackleaf Cliffs is huge.
Yeah. Also, like just having another card that you're happy to discard with Inti, if that happens to fall into the deck, I
Yes,
don't know. That seems like a
I'm into it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the being able to attack with like haste and trample gives me like tenacious underdog vibes, even though it's not like drawing you cards, but um, like a
Yeah,
cheaper version, harder to get out, but like
I like it
I
better than
I like it.
Tenacious Underdog, I
Mhm.
think. I haven't played with it, so maybe I'll just be like, actually, it's terrible. But
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I really
off
wish I had the card, but
off the cuff, I'm like, this is better than Tenacious Underdog. Because Tenacious Underdog was just so expensive. Like four
yeah,
mana
4 mana
is
was.
your whole turn in these
Mhm.
decks. 2 mana is a lot more palatable.
Yeah, especially when you get multiples of these. So for 4 mana, you get two of
You
them
get two
coming
of
back.
them?
So that's
Yeah, now we're talking.
six damage, trample haste.
Trampling.
Yeah.
The trample matters too. So it's just like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's a great card.
Great card. I'm excited for that as well. This one seems sweet, but again, the normal like I want Jeff to show me, and then I'll invest. Um, though my last card is very much a me card, and I saw this and I was like, I like this card a lot, and it
I
makes
saw
me
this
just
and thought of you.
yeah,
So,
I
like,
just
well,
want to
actually, the
play.
first thing I thought was like, wow, the art is so different than all of the other art in the set.
Yes, that
And
that
then
is
I thought Zach would love this
yeah.
card.
So this card is Reluctant Role Model, which is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human survivor. It has the ability keyword, I guess, ability word survival. It says at the beginning of your second main phase, if it is tapped, you can put a flying counter, a lifelink counter, or a +1/+1 counter on it.
Wow.
Your 2 mana 2/2 attacks, it gets flying forever, and then the next turn it gets a counter or lifelink. This is
And then
great.
just grows every single turn.
This is
Like you could just have this be it gets a +1/+1 counter every single turn.
yeah. And then as soon as you start racing, you're just like, and now it has lifelink or
Yeah.
whatever. That's not even the end of the card. There's more text on this card. And it also says whenever a reluctant role model or another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on up to one target creature.
What?
So it has like modular for everything, and it turns all your other stuff into having modular as well.
Yeah. Just
Sign
for
me up.
clarity, that puts the flying counter on something, right?
Correct. So
Jeez.
you just like pass on the whole thing. You put all the counters onto something else.
I
You
hate
have
this card.
yeah. You can just play your second one, put it on that one, or any stupid token, or literally anything. That's as soon as it gets flying, like you just have to make sure you can get the first attack in, and then you're like off to the races. You like I this card seems sweet. I'm all in on it. Let's play some white weenie stuff and
Yeah. This is a like really powerful card. Um, it's not the type of card I usually play, but you never know.
hmm
It's the only reason it's not on my list. But this looks like one of the better cards in the set to me. It's
hmm
just really good. Like just the plus, like if you've ever been on the draw against a 2/2 that grows by one every turn, it's not easy to beat that.
Yeah.
That demands you answer it quickly
hmm
or just get like outpaced by this thing because they're not committing any mana to it. It's just happening every
hmm
turn. It's very much like the fact that it can get flying or lifelink too is like crazy. And then when it dies, it gives all of those to something else. We've seen stuff like this, but it was never this easy to get the counter. All you have to do is tap it.
Yeah. Which, like, yes, of course, there will be times when like tapping it is not super easy. It's not like the one from Zendikar Rising that just puts a counter on whatever you want every turn. Um, but the fact that you get evasion is huge, and you probably also want to have a smattering of like vehicles and stuff in your deck so that later in the game you can just play it and tap it to crew something, even without attacking, just to tap your creature so that it gets the flying counter or whatever you want. Convoke spells, any of that. It's
That's
going
what
to
I
be
was gonna
great.
say, right? Like, is Red White Convoke still good? I don't know. I've been out of the game a little while, but
Yeah, I mean, like
doesn't this just slot right in there?
it's definitely still around. Like it doesn't go into like the nut draws, but like playing the the man, I can't remember any of the stinking
I know,
names
right?
of
Are you
cards,
talking
but
about the one drop that taps
yeah,
three things? Yeah.
yes, the one drop that taps three things. You play this. You're also playing a bunch of
Like this card is really good with that one drop.
yeah. And like I don't even think you need to go because the Convoke deck wants to go really wide so you can get a bunch of stuff and like Alpha Strike people. Um, but this definitely could slot into that. But I think just playing mono white is also
But part of the
worth
thing
it.
about that Convoke deck is that that one drop goes tall. So they're sort of
hmm
going wide and then
And
incidentally just have this tall thing as well. And it makes
or
them kind of fight on two axes.
mhm,
And this gives them a second sort of, hey, I'm going wide, but I can also go tall.
yeah. So anyway, love it, love it, love it. Also love the art. It's like very 80s. I have a calculator on my watch kind of vibes, and I like it.
Yeah, for me, it was just like the art style itself. Like this, at first glance, this almost looked like it was a guy photoshopped in to some
Oh,
like it looked like an
sure.
actual picture of a person rather than uh sort of the more comic booky or cartoony art
Yeah,
that you sometimes see.
which you've mentioned before, but I will say, like we were talking all last week, is that the kind of painting, like realistic depictions of people, is something they used to do a lot in Magic back in like old Border days.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. This
it,
art jumped out to me. I was like, yeah,
mhm.
that would look sweet in Old Border.
Yeah, it just like plays back to that. So, anyway,
Yeah.
love it, love it, love it.
And of
That
course, the calculator fanny pack is awesome.
yeah, so good. Um, but anyway, yeah. So those are our no pass lists. Keeping it really nice and tight this time around. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
As we've gone up and down through things, but yeah. So make yourself a nice little tight no pass list. Stick to it, and you will be happy. And if not, come yell at us in our Discord. It's great. We love getting yelled at.
Yeah, and do whatever's right for you, you
It's
know.
true. Yeah.
I think part of the reason that we were talking about this a little bit off air, part of the reason for us having the tighter list is good is when we got these really long lists, it lightens the load a little bit more because you're like, oh, I could just take that card. Cool, cool, cool. But then you have this issue where you're like tracking this list because it's like, okay, I kind of want four of these lands, but do I want four? Kind of, maybe I'm happy with two. Okay, and then like I'm pouring Oculus, definitely need four of those. And so you're like, okay, I have two of those. I have three of this land. I have two of this land. Like it just became a lot to track to
hmm
the point where I was almost like, I hope something on my no pass list is not in this pack so that I don't have to like consult my spreadsheet to figure out if I need to take it or if that's one I've already hit my optimal number on or
Totally. Yeah. It's like the entire purpose of this was to lighten the brain load, and we are just adding more, in fact, and
yeah, at
making
the
it
start you're like, that's on the list, take it, fine. But
mhm,
down the road is when
because
now
so
you're
much
like, I know
harder.
all the cards. I don't need the time to read them as much. And now I'm like trying to figure out if I actually want this card or if I have enough of them in
Yeah.
my collection.
So we preach this a lot, but hopefully this is helpful for you. It's definitely helped us, and we've of course on our own journey with it. But tell us what you think. But I think it's super great. Another thing I think is super great, and I've really enjoyed the last few sets I've been doing this.
I'm excited
It's
for
a
this.
new thing we found out about. If you follow Magic Data Science on Twitter or X or whatever. Um, they have been doing the Lord's work by putting this whole thing together. And what this is called is it is called the Pack Zero Pick One Challenge. Now, what this is it's using data from 17lands.com, which is a website specifically for tracking data for limited magic on MTG Arena. And it can tell you what are the most winningest cards of players that are getting their data tracked by that website. This is a great way to just kind of see the amalgamation of like what are the best colors, what cards seem to be having the best game in hand win rate, which is the metric that we're always using when we're looking at stuff like this. But it's really cool, and the Pack Zero Pick One challenge is trying to identify 8 cards that will be the most winningest cards before the set comes out. So it's like I predict that these will be the best 5 commons of each color, 2 miscellaneous commons, and then which gold signpost uncommon will be the best or most winningest. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a pretty fun experiment, and it makes you think about. We were talking about this before off air, but it makes you think about what the draft is going to be like before you get into it. Obviously, it's fun to like spot pick things or see uncommons or rares. You're like, oh, this is a sweet bomb, or this is going to be really good and limited, blah blah blah. But going into the drafts, being like, I know that I think this is going to be the best white common. Am I picking it? The amount that I thought I would be picking the best white common, and starting off making kind of your own tier list, and then going through it. Obviously not an entire tier list of like this is the best pick and then I go pick this and then I pick this. Like that's not really fun to me, but I like this challenge a lot. And Magic Data Science on Twitter will keep track of your score. There's actually like a Google sheet you can fill out all of your picks and will keep score. And if you win, then you get to put a little trophy in your Twitter bio saying, "Hey, I was the winner of Bloomborough or whatever."
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's super cool, a lot of fun, and a great way to think about Magic cards. So yeah,
Yeah. I loved it too. I didn't do super well last time. I was a little handicapped though, in that
it's
I didn't know
didn't
of all of the best commons
Jeff just
existed.
doesn't read all the cards. He just didn't go to the next page of commons.
I
Like,
did not like, well, it's actually not quite that. What I was doing was I did it like procedurally. And so I said, let's look at white commons. And I was
mhm,
like, what's the best white common and what are some others that I think are really good? And then I was like, let's look at blue commons.
mhm.
And so that system worked fine, except when I got down to all 5 colors and then artifacts, it did require me to know that there would be gold commons
Yes,
because
you didn't type those into your search bar thing in Scryfall.
yeah, and I guess I was also selecting like exactly blue, not blue
Includes blue.
or
Yeah.
yeah. Um
Where what the way you should do it and the way I did it is just look at all the commons and then you
yeah,
can sort them by
sort
set
them by
slash number.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even color. You can just do it set slash number, which will do white, blue, black, red, green, and then it'll
What
do all the gold, and then it'll do all the
what's the
silver.
difference between sorting by color and sorting by
Set number.
set number?
So set number, the way that when they make magic sets is that they have sheets that are like all the white cards, and then all the blue cards, and then all the green card. And so when you're looking at the actual numbers at the bottom of the card, the first card that comes up in the entire set is Acrobatic Cheerleader because it starts with an A and it's white. And so it's like C0001 or whatever.
But
And
when I
then,
sort by color, it does
mhm.
sort them in Wooburg order and then alphabetically within colors. So I'm wondering if there's a different, like, if I click sort by color versus sort by set number, if anything is different.
I guess I'm not super sure. I just always do set number. But anyway,
Yeah, I always do
um,
color, but now I'm trying to find something where the set number is not
well, Jeff,
correct.
you can keep doing that while I talk about some of the cards from Bloomborough that were the
Do
winningest
it.
cards. So, again,
I
you have
have
to.
learned though, I've sorted by all the commons by color now,
Perfect.
and there are no gold commons. So,
There you go.
phew.
Perfect. Um, just to give you a kind of idea of what some of the winningest cards were from Bloomborough, I'm going to go over the winners from the last set. So again, we are picking 8 cards, one of each color. So that's 5 commons, and then 2 miscellaneous commons that you also think are very good, as well as the signpost uncommon that you think is the winningest. Again, we are looking at the game in hand win rate on 17lands.com. So the best common from Bloomborough, the best white common, was Carrot Cake. That was the 2 mana artifact that makes a rabbit. Then you get to scry and you sacrifice it, and you can also make another rabbit. Um, is definitely a card I thought was not going to be super important. Ended up being super. Just like the one of the most important cards.
Yeah,
Uh, Hilarious that like it wasn't banishing light like the removal spell, which is often a thing that we think about. Moving on to blue, it was Dire Downdraft, which is a bounce spell that puts it on top of their library on the bottom, depending on their what they would like to choose. The best black common was Savor, which is a removal spell. Best red common was Take Out the Trash, a removal spell. The best green common was Cash Grab. So Cash Grab is not a card I thought was going to be one of the best cards. This is like the 2 mana instant where you mill 4 cards and you can put a permanent into your hand. And then if it was a squirrel or you control a squirrel, you get a food. That it wasn't a bite spell, it wasn't a big creature, like it
I
wasn't,
never would have picked that.
never would have picked it. So this was a huge kind of freak out thing. Be like, oh my god, this was such a cool, like if you spiked this card in the pack zero pick one, like you made
Yeah,
it. And this was a
yeah.
really important card to have in your list. Otherwise you had no chance of winning. Super, super cool. And that's one of my favorite parts about this is that like you never know. This could be in so many different sets and you have no idea whether it's going to be good or not. Like you just don't. You don't know until you start playing.
I mean, in the set that has no squirrels in it, it's got to be bad, right?
Well, for sure, yeah, of course. But speaking of squirrels, the signpost uncommon was the Golgari squirrel, Vine Reap Mentor. This one is actually kind of easier to see because it's a 2 mana 3/2 squirrel. When it enters or dies, you create a food.
It's just a
Oh,
good
it's
card.
just a good card.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's like obviously synergizes with a bunch of stuff in the set. But whenever something enters or dies and you get stuff for it, it's just bread and butter. Good magic card. So that one wasn't that hard to pick. Um, but yeah, anyway, so those are the kind of things we're looking for. Limited is all about like creature combat and removal and cards in hand. So if a card makes another card or gets you a card or things like that, they tend to be quite good.
And
So
I had a theory that I expressed to Zach beforehand, so I just wanted to quickly
oh yeah,
confirm or deny it. My theory was that choosing the signpost uncommon part is highly, I think I said it the same as, but
hmm
uh, just choosing the best color pair in the set. So when you said it was the green black signpost uncommon, I just ripped 17 lands open myself,
hmm
and it turns out I guess I was wrong. Golgari is the second best color pair in this set, and
yeah,
Celestia is the best one. So
yeah.
they're tight, they're close. Golgari is very, very good, but it is not exactly the same, just highly correlated.
Yeah. Um, yes. Anyway, Jeff, are you ready to get started for our Pack Zero Pick One for Duskmourn.
I don't know, man. This is tough. I guess I'm ready. Let's
Okay.
just.
All right.
I don't know if I'm gonna be getting more ready. So,
Great. Well, would you like to snake draft this? I could start and then we could go around. How do you feel?
how about we snake draft it, but I start.
Okay. That sounds great. Let's do it.
I love how we're using the term snake draft, but for clarity, we are allowed to pick the same card.
Oh yes, we are.
Yeah,
This isn't. We're just saying snake draft is in like we say that
the
in
turn
fantasy.
order. That's it.
Yeah, in the turn order, like in fantasy football. All
Which
right.
really just means I pick and then you pick twice and I pick twice.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cool. All right. So for white, there's some fun stuff going on in white,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really hard for me not to pick Trapped in the Screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked Trapped in the Screen, which is 2 and a white for an enchantment with Ward 2. When it enters, exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment, an opponent, which could be important, which
Mm-hmm.
an opponent controls until Trapped in the Screen leaves the battlefield. I decided to like give it a pass on it not exiling planeswalkers,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, this one just seems like really strong. Part of the problem with these cards is often can kill them, but the Ward 2 really helps there too. So this seems like a great card for limited.
Yeah. This is a no-brainer. There is one other removal spell in white, but it's just not nearly as good as this. I
Yeah,
also picked Trapped in the Screen. So just seems like you just kind of have to. Um, Even though Banishing Light wasn't amazing in the last set, it's still just a great ability. Also, in conjunction with white cares about artifacts and or artifacts enchantments entering the battlefield. So this can also that's a big theme in the set is enchantments entering. So
right.
having a removal spell that is an enchantment is just gonna be helpful. Like it will just
Yeah.
trigger your other stuff. So it gets extra points for that. Trapped in the Screen, very good.
That being said, it probably means there's more ways to deal with enchantments than usual, which I think
So
is why the Ward 2 is here.
exactly.
Um, but I also like the flavor text. It tells a nice little story there
Oh
without
yeah. What does
doing
it
too
tell?
much. It just says Maggie had always wanted to be on television.
Ah,
So obvious,
that's so good.
right?
It's yeah, it's like a poltergeist thing where someone's stuck in the screen and they're trying to get out.
Yeah.
Um, Love it. The awesome. Which reminds me, I actually need to watch Poltergeist. I've never seen that movie. But referencing it felt good right there.
Nailed it.
Anyway, nailed it. No one
I've
knew.
also never seen it, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna give that reference, A
Ooh.
plus.
Do we need a watch party? Should we get together and
Yeah,
watch
let's just do it
Poltergeist?
right now.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
just,
perfect. Let's just stop the
you're just
podcast.
like, no, we'll keep recording.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just us watching Poltergeist.
All right, so going into blue, there's a lot of normal things you're looking at in blue. Obviously, we're looking at removal spells, though blue tends not to have like really exciting ones. Counter spells can be a thing you can look at as well. Um, but honestly, this card popped out. This is one of the ones I feel kind of the least great about.
Why do you think I snake drafted where I stick?
No,
I
I
choose
knew
blue.
exactly why you did this. I knew that you didn't want to pick blue first. You wanted to see what I picked. So I've decided that uh, this card seems like it. They always sneak up on me, cards like this, and I want to kind of get out in front of it. So I picked Tunnel Surveyor. So Tunnel Surveyor
Oh,
is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 creature human detective, and when it enters, you create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. So this is a creature that enters, makes another creature, so you get 2 cards for the price of one, and the other card is an enchantment, which will trigger all your enchantment stuff. The only downside to this card is that it itself is not an enchantment, so when it dies and goes to your graveyard, it only counts as a creature for Delirium,
hmm.
which is another big main thing of the set. But I still think getting 2 pieces of cardboard for the price of one can still be really good. Though traditionally that has been best in like white and green, so we'll see. But I don't feel too embarrassed picking this card. I think it's
No,
definitely.
I think that's a very reasonable pick. It's one of the cards I was looking at as well.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm going to choose it. Uh, I do really like that the creature token's an enchantment. I've just I just wish that like it's just a 2/2, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
It
It's
doesn't
like,
do
oh
anything else, I
man,
know.
it doesn't have flying. In the past, we've seen this type of thing, flying, but then again, it doesn't have this. Didn't have this super relevant enchantment creature. So
Yeah.
maybe that's enough. I'm not sure, to be honest.
Well, who
I
knows?
do like this card.
I feel
I
like I'm
just
taking a shot with this one. So,
I
uh,
decided to make a bit of a bet in blue because I
oh,
wasn't sure. A lot of these cards feel reasonable. Um, I'm gonna lock it in,
lock it
which
in.
yeah, uh, which is a pun because I'm choosing Meat Locker,
Okay.
and I'm gonna lock her in. That's what I should have said.
There we go.
Yeah, we got there.
Yeah.
Just edit it so that I said that the first time. Yeah, so Meat Locker is a room. So there are two bets I'm making here. One is that rooms are good in limited, which I think
Hmm.
is not a tough sell. To me,
Yeah.
it's like two spells in one that's
Hmm.
always good, even if the spells are individually a little weaker than you're used to. These things tend to be pretty good. The second bet I'm making is that the format is not going to be blazingly fast because this
Hmm.
is not the fastest card in the world, but it does help. So Meat Locker is 2 and a blue, or 3 blue is Drowned Diner. It's an enchantment room, so it's a split enchantment. Meat Locker is when you unlock this door, tap up to one target creature and put 2 stun counters on it. And Drowned Diner is when you unlock this door, draw 3, then discard. So what I really like about this card is like this is exactly what a control deck wants. It
Hmm.
wants to have something that it can play early and really like 2 stun counters on a creature. Buys you some time. That's not
Hmm.
bad. And then later in the game, when you've expended all of your removal and stuff, like you can play Drowned Diner. A lot of the times, like the problem with cards like Drowned Diner is that they take up a card in your deck. And so to
Hmm.
have something that is not great, Meat Locker is not great, but adding it to that card that would normally just be kind of a dead card against aggro is really nice. It makes you want to kind of play this in your control decks. So if control decks are a reasonable archetype in this format, then I think this card could be really good.
Yeah. I I also saw this card, but for almost exactly the same reasons. I think it's wishful thinking in my mind. The card I picked is a little bit more aggressive because it gives you two bodies to do stuff with.
Yeah.
And this card, it doesn't give you any bodies, but slows things down and like refills your hand, which is the kind of card I don't like very much.
Yeah.
So it might just be my preference, but it could be very good. And I agree, rooms once again, it's one piece of cardboard that gives you two effects worth of cardboard. So, um,
Yeah, I think that was the selling point for me is like
mm,
there were I wasn't sure, and so like let's default to rooms we're sure are gonna be at least pretty good.
totally.
I might like even when I'm playing, I might take Tunnel Surveyor over Meat Locker, but
Hmm.
we're just making a little bit of a bet here that the format's gonna pan out a
Balance out to
certain
be
way.
this, yeah, at the end. So Jeff, give us your black card then.
I feel really bad about this, but my black card is Murder. Like
Okay, yeah.
I I wasn't super inspired by the Black Commons, so I wasn't really sure, and I was like, let's just do Murder.
Murder solid. Um, I didn't take murder just because we've had it in a couple sets and it hasn't been amazing. I don't know if the double black is throwing me off now. Though I do think that this set could have some the card I chose could prove to be a little bit too weak. Um,
I was
uh,
hoping not to take Murder because I knew it was in the
mhm.
set, and then when I looked at all the Black Commons, I was kind of like, is Black gonna be bad in this format?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I ended up taking Winter's Intervention, which is one in a black for an
Yep.
instant. It deals 2 damage to target creature and you gain 2 life. This is a card that is cheap and easy to cast, so it can keep you alive if the format ends up being longer. And if it's shorter, it kills their little stuff, and any of their Manifest Dreads it kills. Um, though a lot of time Manifest Dread is like stapled onto another card, so I don't know. Maybe it's not amazing, but I just feel like I've looked overlooked these cards sometimes. where it's like the smaller removal spell, thinking that the other one. Basically, it's the conversation between like, should I pick murder or should I pick this card? And I ended up going with this one. So um, we'll see. But it really is just like, what does the set lend itself to? Um, which then pushes us into red commons. Red and black tend to be kind of, these are the boring-ish ones because you kind of know what you're going to pick. And we actually have a reprint in this set, not just murder, but we also have Scorching Dragonfire, which is the card I picked, which is 1 in red for an instant, and Scorching Dragonfire deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and if that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. Um, I think the exile clause is going to be really good in this set. Trying to just make sure your opponent doesn't have cards in their graveyard for delirium or different things. Also, just 2 mana deal 3 is just really good. So at instant speed,
This one was the easiest one for me, I
yeah.
think. Maybe White was easiest, but this okay. So this was a no-brainer with one minor exception. Glassworks/Shattered Yard gave me
Hmm.
pause. I think that there's a chance that that one is actually the
Better.
best.
Yeah. So Glassworks Shattered Yard is the room in this thing, and Glassworks deals 4 damage to target creature, and then Shattered Yard, it just says at the beginning of your end step, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Um,
This could be really good, like the
it.
early-ish mid-game removal
Mhm.
spell into win con at the in the late game.
It. Yes. It.
But it requires the metagame to be sort of rather specific for this. This is definitely going to be good. For it to be better than Scorching Dragonfire, I think requires a relatively specific metagame of
Yes.
board stalls and stuff where you're like, that Shattered Yard really matters.
Hmm.
Um,
Because so Glassworks costs 3 and Shattered Yard costs 5. Spending your whole turn like 5 to deal 1 damage at the end of your turn, and like, how many turns are you going to be alive for it to actually like do something is kind of difficult. The ones I really like that feel better, like there's those black cards that like are 4 mana and drain every turn, but you gain life when you do that. Like even those don't get over the finish line, but this does kill something. I don't know. I guess in the end I decided because Glassworks was a sorcery speed removal spell, I liked it
yeah,
less. So
I think Dragonfire's like I think it's like 90% to be the right choice. And
yeah,
then there
there's a
there's a
small
small
chance.
chance that one of these other ones ends up edging it out a bit.
Hmm.
But yeah.
But yeah, you never know. Well then, Jeff, what's your green card?
Okay, green I thought also was interesting. So I
Hmm.
think green and blue were the most interesting
They
picks.
always are.
Yeah.
They always are.
Maybe that's just because I don't like Simic. Is that what's going on? Uh,
So it's like I don't even know.
yeah, what the hell is happening?
Hmm.
Um, Part of me really wanted to pick Manifest Dread, but I just don't think it's quite good enough for that. So, and maybe this is telling that in the two colors that I was most unsure of, I picked Rooms, but I went
Hmm.
Moldering Gym here.
Okay.
I like the look of Moldering Gym. I think this card looks pretty good, and it seems like the type of card that's better than it looks. But I'm taking a bit of a bet here because there are some more obvious choices, I think.
Yeah.
So
What is this card?
Moldering Gym, that's a good point. It's a
Hmm.
room and it turns into Weight Room, or it's split with Weight Room. Moldering Gym is 2 and a green. When you unlock it, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Weight Room is when you unlock it, manifest Dread, and then put 3+1/+1 counters on. So manifest Dread into a 5/5. So I just
Hmm.
like the again, this could be sort of assuming the format's slightly slower,
Hmm.
but the good mana fixing/ramper into the late game 5/5
Thread.
and the 3+1/+1 counters on a manifest like matter more than usual because you could actually flip that manifest into a creature and it would still have those 3+1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful Weight Room is a really powerful card. And again, I'm just like I like the sort of early game or card you might almost play anyways in Moldering Gym, just with the good back end. Like I think if
Hmm.
Moldering Gym costs one in the green, you for sure play it. It's
Hmm.
great,
Oh,
right?
it's really good.
Forget what the name of that card is now, but
Rampant growth.
is that just what Rampant Growth does? Any
Yeah,
basic? Yeah, so Rampant Growth would be awesome in limited. I think you're willing to pay two and a green in a lot of formats. There are some where you can't. And so,
that's like the basic. That's what we get nowadays. We don't really get rampant growth anymore.
yeah. And I
Um,
think stapling the late game powerhouse to that gets you there. But could be wrong. Could be wrong.
could be wrong. I like this call out though. I think honestly, the more you talk about rooms, the more I feel like I should have spent a little bit more time looking at them because I'm feeling like, it might be the problem of they are sideways on the sheet when I look at it, and so I just
Yeah.
like don't want to read them,
The
so I
trick
gotta
is to
pause
always
them.
click them.
Yeah. Um, well, so the card I picked is actually funny because you mentioned it, but I picked Manifest Dread.
You did pick
I
it.
did. I
Oh,
did
I
pick
was
it.
so close to picking
Yeah.
it.
But the reason I picked it, let me read Manifest Dread. So it's one in a green for a sorcery, and it just says Manifest Dread, which we've been talking about it a lot this episode. But you look at the top two cards of your library, you put one onto the battlefield as a 2/2 face down, and the other into your graveyard. The reason that I actually like Manifest Dread as this card is that it is also a sorcery. So basically, you get to pick from the different things that are in your top two. You know you're getting a sorcery into your graveyard for sure. You can throw a land or whatever else you get, and then one of them's a creature, and then you can trade that off to get another one. So this is like one card, almost all delirium. Like you're basically getting yourself like most likely 50% to 75% of delirium. I would 50 for sure. Like I don't think very many of these I don't think your limited decks for the most part want to play too many sorceries. If this is your only sorcery, awesome. You know what I mean? And most likely we'd love to throw a land in the yard and then hopefully we get something else, but who knows? You can do a lot of different stuff with it. But the fact that you're manifesting dread with a sorcery, I think, is really helpful. Because a lot of the other ones are like you play a creature and then when it dies, you manifest dread or different things like that. But then you have a lot of creatures in your deck already, and creatures are really easy to have in your graveyard. Lands are another thing. And then instants. So making sure you have enough sorceries that can go in the yard as well as enchantments and artifacts will be really important. That's the big, I think, pieces of it.
Yeah.
Because the other ones you actively like having in your deck, you have to find ways to fit the other ones in. Um, so I think this one could do it. This is a kind of weird pick for me, but I believe in Manifest Dread. I think it can do it.
I think that's the part I missed. When I was thinking about this card, I was shortcutting it as Grizzly Bears with upside.
Mm,
And it's like, okay, does it have enough upside to get there? Sometimes it flips into something bigger later,
hmm.
and it puts something in your yard. Is that enough? And I just like overlooked the fact that it actually puts two things in your yard, one of
Hmm.
which is always a sorcery.
Yeah.
That might be enough.
So
That's
it took me a little bit to think of it like that as well, because I was trying to think of like, why would this not only like, why would they print this? Like, because I felt when I first saw it being like, oh, that's kind of dumb. But then I had to go through, it took a while.
now we
So,
both love it. First
yes.
we're like, oh, it's so stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really stupid. So, uh, I'm prepared to be wrong, but I do
Oh,
like
I
it.
kind of like it now. Kind of
Hmm.
like that pick now.
Yeah. Um, so those,
This is all my fault for choosing to snake draft in the other
yeah,
order.
yeah, exactly. You could have just said, yeah, me too. I'm gonna go with this.
Yeah,
Um, anyway, so we're moving
totally
in.
thought of all those things myself as well.
Yeah. We are moving into, so those were the like five ones that had to be a specific color. Now we get two that could be any color. However, my next one happens to be green. Um, I am always excited when I can pick cards that aren't just a removal spell. And this and the other thing is that whenever there's a card that lets you draw another card, I'm on board.
Yeah.
We don't really have one of those this set except for Spineseeker Centipede. So Spineseeker Centipede is a 3 mana, so it's 2 and a green for a 2/1 creature insect. But when it enters, you get to search your library for a basic land and put it into your hand. And then if you have Delirium, it gets +1/+2 and has Vigilance. So it's a 3 mana 3/3 that draws you a land. I know that sometimes like putting a land in your hand isn't as good as putting it on the battlefield, but I think that anytime you get something, even if you're just drawing, like it draws you a card, you just know what the card is. It's a land. But drawing your land is a great thing, and if this format is a bit longer, you're gonna need cards that give you more cards. A 3/3 vigilant body. If we're playing this with Manifest Dread, we have Delirium for sure. So I'm not really considering this a 2/1. I'm considering it a
Yeah.
3/3 almost every time.
This was the other card I was looking at
Mhm.
once I had dismissed Manifest Dread uh, as the green common.
Foolishly.
And I was like, maybe I'll take the weird shot on the room, but
I
probably the centipede is better.
mhm.
Um, I have a fun question for you though.
Yeah.
Would this card be better or worse if it put that basic land into your graveyard?
Ooh. Um that's actually pretty interesting. I like that idea. I'm gonna say it's worse if it puts it in your graveyard. You know what? Lands is another hard one to get in your graveyard if you're not just like milling stuff. Um, but I do like on 3 making sure you have your fourth land or whatever to go into your bigger stuff, especially in green, is pretty important. I think in like thinking about it as like a thought experiment, it sounds super cool to be like, oh yeah, it's better to have the land go in your graveyard. But I think in practice, I'm gonna like it more when it goes into my hand,
I
even if
came to
I
the same conclusion.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah yeah. But
My I had this similar thought process where I was like, in almost any set, you know, in most sets, it's better as is. This
mhm,
set, it's like, is it possible that it's better
maybe
the other way? But I think you're just getting a little too fancy there, and you just want the card,
yeah,
and
you get a
it's
bit
just going to be
cheeky,
better to get the card.
totally.
But I think it's kind of like it was just interesting to think about, right? It's like, oh man, what if this put it in your graveyard? Then it would, because I was thinking, oh, the first ability doesn't actually help you get delirium at all.
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, wait, what if it put that in your graveyard? That would actually be a big help towards getting delirium.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it was funny looking at a bunch of these cards. I thought about a majority of them in that like instance, like thinking, can this get me to delirium or not, or does this work towards that? And
yeah,
I think actually what pushed me away from room so often was because I knew those weren't going into my graveyard like ever.
yeah.
Like the point of them was that they're going to sit on the battlefield. If it happened to be some of these like delirium colors, I liked them a little bit more, as I said before, in the white blue enchantments enter decks. Um, Funny how that works. I'm sure you could have like good green enchantments enter and the white cards you're playing alongside them also trigger. But
Yeah.
anyway, very interesting. Uh,
Um, I was just gonna say, like, that's part of the reason that, like, for example, Slavering Branch Snapper, which is the four
mhm,
green green, 7/6 trampled, four cycling two. I think generally in a limited environment where graveyards matter, you have to really look at these land cycling cards and be like, hey, this could be
mhm.
honestly a great card. But for Delirium specifically, land cyclers are not really helping you because
Get.
it's getting creatures in the yard is the freebie. Like
Hmm.
that one is that's going to happen in a game of
Hmm.
limited. And so I think it's really interesting that the land cyclers are in this set because often land cyclers are in graveyard matter sets or like reanimator type stuff. It's like, whoa, that was really cool. It helps you early get your lands, and then you reanimate this 7/6 trample. But in this set, I'm like, Delirium almost doesn't care about this at all, so it's just about the classic, like, I'm gonna hit the land for you early, and I'm gonna be a 7/6 for you if you don't
Hmm.
need that later. Which I think is a cool. It's weird to call it a spin because it's like not spinning it. Normally they do spin it where it's like having
It
this in your
actually does
graveyard.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, having this in your graveyard matters.
Hmm.
And this time they're like, well, it could matter if you're in a scenario where you had no creatures in your graveyard for delirium. But
Yeah. So Jeff,
usually,
I pose you the same thing. What if Slavering Branch Snapper had forest cycling, but it put the forest in your graveyard instead of your hand? Would it be better?
I think it would be better. I'm going on record. It would be better than it is now.
2 mana, discard this card, search my library for a land, put it in my graveyard.
Yeah. No, it would obviously be worse, but like it's yeah. And I'm gonna talk so much shit about slavering branch snapper, and that's gonna end
This
up
could
being
be
the
the
number one
best one.
green combo. But yeah. Just
Yeah.
based on the fact that it's a land early and a big
Yeah.
creature, a finisher late. But
Yeah. It is funny we haven't talked about these until this moment that there is a cycle of these. They never, well, maybe it's not that funny. They never end up being the best card, but they end up being like helpful. But it, yeah,
they're usually like really mid pack.
yeah, very mid pack of like I'm really glad I have like one of them, or like maybe two in green or green black because you can reanimate stuff. Though in this set, white has a big reanimation spell common, so who knows? Anyway, we've been off topic for a little bit. Jeff,
Yeah.
I know you're stalling. What's your miscellaneous number one?
Okay, so the reason I'm stalling is that I had the centipede as one of my
Well,
ones.
say the centipede.
But because I was like, oh, the
Mm-hmm.
green one is like the one I'm least sure on with the moldering gem, and I'm pretty
Sure.
sure it's probably the centipede. But then you almost convinced me that I should switch it to Manifest Dread. So I was
Oh
like, in
gosh,
my
it's
head that whole time, I was like, am I gonna switch it? I think I'm gonna stick with the centipede. But
okay.
that'll be my first one. I'm with you on Spine Seeker, Centipede. That's a
Okay.
good card.
I'm excited to see what your second one is because mine is a doozy. So,
Oh, but mine's not a doozy, except that we already like talked about it, I guess.
oh, great.
So
Let's go.
I picked Glassworks as
Okay,
my second
sure.
one. So I picked Glassworks and Shattered Yard because I just think like you're fine playing Glassworks in limited.
Hmm.
The only thing debate in red for me was like, is it ever going to be better than Scorching Dragonfire? Scorching Dragonfire is so good in
Hmm.
limited. And then I was like, well, let's just choose it as our secondary one then because I think it's still really good.
Yeah.
It's just like not the red champion because there happens to be one of the best red limited spells of all time in this
Hmm.
set. So like, what are you gonna do? But I'm a believer in room. You can see I've really
Yeah.
locked in. I've chosen like 3 rooms so far. I'm in
Well,
on rooms being good and limited.
yeah, Jeff, do you want to actually just officially read the Glasswork Shattered Yard just because we kind of skipped over it and I didn't really give it its time in the sun?
Sure. So Glassworks Shattered Yard is a room. Glassworks is 2 in a red, and it's when you unlock it, it deals 4 damage to target creature an opponent controls.
Hmm.
Really important that you can't target your own stuff, I guess. Shattered Yard is 4 in a red at the beginning of your end step. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. I guess my question about that, this is totally off the cuff again.
Hmm.
When you unlock this door, it deals 4 damage to target creature and opponent controls. Can you unlock that if your opponent has no creatures?
Uh,
Like you wouldn't be able to put that spell on the stack, but it's an enchantment.
no, I think when it enters the battlefield, it unlocks the door and then either it just does the thing or
It would just do nothing, right?
yeah, but it doesn't officially unlock until it's a triggered ability. So you don't need a target because you could just play
Right, you
the
don't need a target. That's what
no.
I assumed,
Hmm.
but then I was like,
Because
I'm curious why they made you target an opponent's creature. Because I was like, oh, maybe they don't want you to just like unlock the door to get your unlock door triggers by
well,
targeting your own stuff, but you could just unlock it anyways, right?
if it said deal 4 damage to target creature and your opponent didn't have a creature, it would just kill one of your creatures, right? because it doesn't say up to. It would just target your own stuff.
Oh, you
So
would
this
have
is
to select your own
yeah.
thing.
So this is in the use.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's the opposite. Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
So
opposite.
it lets you unlock it when your opponent doesn't have any creatures, even though it
Correct.
seems like it does the opposite kind of because it
Hmm.
forces you to target an opponent's creature.
Yes. So like your opponent can't sacrifice the creature in response and make you kill your own thing.
Got it.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
I believe
So
that's
that's
what.
why that's there. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
there we go. We figured it out.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you did. I was just along for the ride.
no, no, I mean, like, I didn't even think that it was. I didn't even think about that until you brought it up. So I'm glad that you did. Cool. All right. So you got 3 rooms. I'm at 0 rooms currently.
All in on rooms.
All right. I like that shot. All in on like
I
really
feel like you
cheap
got to go
stuff.
big on these things, right? I'm either going to be like in the bottom 20% or
Hmm.
in the top 20%. I'm okay
Well,
with that.
that's good because there's no money on the line really. It's just
Oh, I'm putting money
prestige.
on it.
I mean,
I'm
we
just gonna
should.
like throw. I'm just gonna burn money if I lose, and I'm gonna create money if I win. No.
Totally. Yeah, print your own.
Yeah,
All right, so this is the one
yeah,
that I
that's
was
frowned upon.
the most like iffy about, but I ended up talking myself into it. My card's also red, and I decided I was gonna pick Clockwork Percussionist. So,
Okay.
Clockwork Percussionist is a 1 mana 1/1.
I don't think I considered this one. Let me read it.
It's a 1 mana one
Oh, I
one
looked at this one. Okay,
artifact creature monkey token. Or toy. Sorry, it's not a
yeah,
token. It has haste, and it says when it dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. So, like I was saying before, picking cards that I kind of like in aggressive decks. This is a 1 mana 1/1 haster. The most important thing is that this is an artifact creature. Artifacts are going to be hard to get into your graveyard. Delirium is a red mechanic in the set. I think this is a role player. I think you're going to want these cards for your deck. You attack early. When it dies, you don't care because you draw a card off of it. You get to play something. And you
yeah,
get to play it to the end of your next turn. So even if it's something that's bigger or whatever, you'll be fine. This is just a 1 mana 1/1 that attacks in until they block it. Then it helps you get half of your delirium and you play another card off the top. I I think it can do something. It looks kind of stupid, but I think it will be really important because the other artifacts don't seem very good.
Um, I love this because like my key bet is that rooms are good, and your key bet is that delirium is going to be good. Because if
Yeah,
delirium is not good, a lot of your choices are going to shift down that rank ordering
yeah,
list a
just
little
like
bit.
fall. Yeah,
And we both picked mechanics in the set that were like that seems like it's going to be good, and kind of
see,
anchored our choices on that.
what I'm worried about is that you picked cards that generically just like are good because they have like 2 cards stapled to one. I picked a bunch of stuff that like enables a mechanic that I didn't pick any payoffs for. It just like it just like
The
this
delirium
helped.
deck is just it can really get delirium. Like
Yeah,
it can really nail that, but
doesn't
the
even
creatures don't actually improve. So,
no, like
yeah.
nothing really changes. Like you don't get any bonuses. You just have delirium,
But
and you
I
have
guess this
it.
thing is a 3/2 now.
Yeah, it's like you have it as fast as possible, but like nothing else happens. Um,
I love
that
that. That's the kind of deck I'm gonna build.
yeah, I kind of realized that like too late in the process to change. I was like, oh shit. Do I need to look at all the other cards to determine whether Delirium is going to be good or not? I'm like, I just have to play the set. I can't really go into that. Oh,
Maybe they're
well,
going a different way with it, right? In the past, it was like huge delirium payoffs, but delirium's just super hard to achieve. And now they're like, hey, maybe it's minor delirium payoffs,
hmm
but it's actually easier than it has been traditionally.
yeah, maybe that would make sense, but I don't really love it because that means that my cards are not very good that I picked.
Not
Um,
necessarily. The minor payoffs could be enough. Could be like, if you're getting them on turn three or whatever.
that's true. That's true. All right, Jeff, we got to go to our last cards. These are our signpost uncommons for the set. As you said earlier, this will determine which color pair we think is going to be the best in the set.
It's
Um,
close. It's not quite
it's
the
pretty
same as
close, not
signpost, but it's
exactly.
close.
Remember, they have previously in Magic sets, they used to just have one signpost uncommon for every color pair, so that would be 10. Um, However, they have recently changed it with the play boosters. I believe that's when they changed this, where there are two signpost uncommons that are gold for each color pair. So there are 20 total. One is a creature and one is not a creature. Um, I just think that's kind of interesting. It's they if you didn't know, there's a big article explaining what they did with new designs since the play booster, and they actually give you basically the breakdown of their their blueprint sheet of what they kind of do each set. They're just like looking for stuff to plug into different places. Obviously, we feel it when we play Magic a lot. You know, this is the one mana white creature. This is the reanimation spell. This is the whatever spell. This is whatever. Um, but they literally have that. So we can
Well,
obviously.
I think a lot of their choice to do that is about recognizing that that happens anyways,
Mhm.
right? It's like people already feel, oh, this is the white one draw, and it's like, so that cost is kind of already paid. Let's at
Mhm.
least make it easier on ourselves by actively delivering
Exactly.
that.
Also being able
Um,
to realize like, oh, these things work and we can use them to our advantage to make good magic sets faster
yeah,
because let's face it, magic is just better than it used to be as far as like limited goes.
I think so.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
like
especially unlimited, but I actually think, broadly speaking, the only place I disagree is the frame.
the frame.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Um,
also agree.
but I do want to call out that you said that there's now two, a creature and a non-creature.
Hmm.
It's actually not true in this set.
What are you talking about?
Take a good gander at the blue black signpost uncommons.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Blue black has two
They're
creatures.
both creatures.
They're both creatures, but one's an enchantment creature.
One
So,
is an enchantment creature, yeah.
all right,
And actually, I guess blue white as well.
you're right. But one's an enchantment creature. Don't get mad at me.
Yeah. So uh it's always one creature and then one enchantment, artifact, instant, or sorcery, I guess is
Or
the
land.
yeah, or planeswalker. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, Kaito's just like the other
Just
uncommon.
this the blue black signpost uncommon, which tells you it should be ninjas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point of these, I mean, we're going on way too long about signposts and comments, but the point of these is just to kind of show you as a drafter what the color pair is supposed to do in the set.
Yeah,
It's my turn to pick because
sure is.
you're last, but my signpost uncommon is a card that I know you love very deeply. And when I was picking it, I was like, "Ugh, Jeff loves this card, but I'm gonna pick it anyway." I picked Sawblade Skin Ripper,
Yeah,
which
you did.
is one black red for a 3/2 creature human assassin. It has menace. It also has the activated ability pay 2 generic mana, sacrifice another creature or enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter on Sawblade Skin Ripper. Sweet. But the thing that pushes it over the top, this is the reason that I really picked it. It says at the beginning of your end step, if you sacrificed one or more permanents this turn, Sawblade Skin Ripper deals that much damage to any target. That's great. That's good.
Yeah,
Like, this thing can just get huge and also ping off a bunch of stuff and like hit your opponent, or it can deal the extra damage you need at the end of the turn. Um, it gets huge. You have to double block this thing. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I really like about it. I'm just interested to see all the little fodder that we can have because strangely enough, a lot of the token generation was in like white blue and stuff. So I'm trying to exactly figure out where the other engine pieces are. But this card is very intriguing, and it's going to be difficult for me not to want to pick this in a draft because it looks like it's just going to be a lot of fun and also very strong. So,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
come on, you know I picked this one.
Yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know I picked Mayhem Devil number
Hmm.
two in this. There's two Mayhem Devils. So
Crazy.
you know I picked Mayhem Devil for my signpost uncommon. This card's
Hmm.
great. I was briefly. Like, okay, my thing's all about rooms, and then there's a signpost uncommon that is like room tribal.
Hmm.
Do I just go all in and pick the room tribal like rooms card and just be the rooms guy? And but I just think it's not gonna it just doesn't seem good enough. And maybe I'll regret that, but I'll read that card so that, because
Okay.
we picked the same card, so I might as well read a second signpost uncommon.
Hmm.
And this is Smoky Lounge slash Misty Salon, which I do kind of like the duality it's going
Hmm.
naming. Smoky Lounge is two and a red for enchantment room. Beginning of your first main phase, add red red. Spend it only to cast room spells and unlock doors. Misty Salon is three and a blue. When you unlock it, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of unlocked doors among rooms you control. So on its own, it's like a 3 mana up front and then 2 mana next turn to get a 2/2 flyer. That seems too bad as
That's
the on its
really,
own.
really
Like
bad.
that's too much for a wind drake. Like
Hmm.
that's too much. So if and then I'm trying to think like what if I have one other room? Have I unlocked both doors? Like so I play Smoky Lounge and then I play another thing, another room.
Hmm.
And then the next turn I can cheaply unlock the second part of that room. And then I can unlock Misty Salon for a mere 2 mana, and then I get an air elemental. And it just doesn't feel like it scales well enough for the like hoops that I'm jumping through on this. Because
Hmm.
I'm assuming even with this bonus, it's going to be tough to unlock more than one room per turn,
Especially because it's all red mana, is what I was thinking.
right? So I don't know. I'm just like I
Because the
like the idea of being all in on rooms and then picking the room card as the
mhm.
room tribal card. But then I was like, this is just like on pure power level, the worst one that I'm looking at. Like all of the
Mhm.
other ones are just good on their
Well, the other
own.
ones do stuff.
Yeah, they do something, right?
Yeah,
So
this one is the one that like you realize, oh, blue red is open because you get it like with three cards in the pack.
the baseline here needed to be higher. Like this is too much for a Windrake, you know?
Honestly, like what are the other rooms that you can have with it, right? Like there's two common red ones, which we talked about one of them, and then there's one like red mythic one that like lets you place shit for free. But I don't know. That just seems like a lot. A lot of it just seems like a lot. I don't know.
And
Because
to
it,
your point, like the whole idea behind choosing rooms was they're just naturally good limited cards and it's sort of not about this format. It's just
yeah,
about, hey, getting
mm,
2 cards in one is stronger than it seems in limited always. And so
yeah,
choosing the like room tribal card is then like you're missing the point of why I'm choosing rooms in the first place. 'Cause
exactly. Yeah, it just doesn't have like it technically does two things, but one of them is kind of shitty. Smoky Lounge honestly sucks because like it seems like it's powerful, but you can only cast rooms
as
with it or
especially
unlock stuff.
unlimited, it's
The
terrible.
fact that you can't even cast enchantments, like it doesn't help just with enchantments, right? Which is a lot of the other cards care about, like, oh, if an enchantment or a room unlocks. But this is
Yeah.
only rooms.
My mind auto corrected it to that the first time I read it. It was like,
Hmm.
oh, enchantment, or you can spend the mana on enchantments or rooms, right? And I had to
Hmm.
read it a couple of times, be like, only rooms?
Only
Like,
rooms,
come
yeah.
on.
Yeah, so I think you can just, you can just burn this card. It can be up in smoke because I don't think it's going to be any good. But we'll see.
This is like a build around D in the limited resources
Yeah.
terms, or like a build around C or whatever. Like you can work really hard to make this card worth putting in your deck. Is it going to be great? I don't think
No.
it's ever going to be great.
Especially because I think that the blue red mechanic is going to be a bit more aggressive than this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the other blue red cards are just like aggressive creatures
Yeah.
or like little flyers and stuff. So, anyway, sweet. All right. Well, that's it. We did it. The pack zero pick one challenge. I love it.
Do we have to choose a rare?
So there is a well, I didn't think you really wanted to do this, but uh technically there is a tiebreaker. It's a rare, just a card that you think might be the most winningest rare from the set. But yeah, if Jeff, if you want to, we definitely can. I have one ready, but I was wondering whether you actually wanted to do it or not.
We might as well, I guess, do the whole thing. Um, if you have one ready, you read yours, and I'm gonna read all of the rare rooms. And
Perfect. All right. Well, it's you better go pretty quickly because the rare that I picked is already a card we talked about earlier because it's Reluctant Role Model.
I was gonna pick that one too. I was like, that's the easy one, right? That's
Reluctant
just
Role Model. We talked about it earlier. Is the 2 mana 2/2 that gets flying or lifelink or +1/+1 counters when it's tapped and it modulars all of its counters onto other stuff. This is just a great card for limited. Like
super strong limited
your
card, yeah.
entire deck is just like making sure that your opponent can't block by just like killing their creatures. You attack in with it, you can race them because you have a flying lifelink that gets huge. If they kill it, you make another creature have a flying lifelink is huge. The biggest downside to Reluctant Role Model is board wipes, and that's just not a thing that happens that much in limited. One thing that will happen with this, though, however, is that there are obviously trapped in the screen is like an edict effect, or not edict, sorry. It's banishing light, so it doesn't die, so you don't get the counters. So that's a clean
Hmm.
way to get rid of it. That's at common. There's a couple other cards that also have that effect in white. Your opponent can balance it and stuff. So it is much better when you're playing against red and black, though, to be fair, the best color pair is going to be red black because we already picked the best signpost uncommon. So there you go. Reluctant Role Model. Great.
All right. I mean, yeah, it was the one that jumped out to me is like, wow, it's just a super strong limited card. That should be your default rare, unless you find something else. But now I'm all in on doors. We're doing
Hmm.
doors,
All right.
so um,
Jim Morrison over
let's
here.
yeah, let's go Roaring Furnace, Steaming Sauna. So
Hmm.
actually think this is. I was like looking through all the doors, and I finally hit one at the end. I'm like, oh, this thank God this door does not suck in limited. Um, Roaring Furnace, one in a red. When you unlock it, this room deals damage equal to the number of cards in your hand to target creature an opponent controls. So, solid early game removal spell.
Hmm.
Steaming Sauna, 3 blue blue. You have no maximum hand size, whatever. But at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. So, it's probably not actually going to be the highest win rate one just because it's red blue. So, like, unless red blue's amazing, like, it's very specific. But this is a house in limited if you're in red blue. And I love
Hmm.
the idea that I just like laughed at the red blue door in the uncommon
In the
section. And
uncommons.
now I'm like, well, the red blue door in the rare section, though, it's pretty good. Uh,
To to be fair, you can pick up this card and play it in either deck. Like playing Roaring Furnace in your red deck isn't, or your red white deck or whatever, like isn't the absolute worst thing you could possibly do.
yeah, exactly.
Obviously,
I
it's
think you want to be at least red because like
the blue side you're saying is just
steaming
not
sauna
good.
just on its own.
I don't
I
know
mean, it's
if
powerful, but 5 minutes so much.
I know, but if imagine you're playing like the format ends up being like a grindy soul tie kind of format where you just need something like this where you get extra card advantage each turn. And the fact that you
Yeah.
get a card right away is really helpful.
Yeah. I also do like how, you know, it does go the other way pretty well as well. So
Hmm.
even if you're just splashing red, whenever
It's
you
true.
hit that red source, you're probably dealing a lot of damage because now your hand is stacked.
Yeah,
But which
that
is
is true.
usually Roaring Furnace type cards. It's like, well, it's only good in the early game because you're gonna have no cards later in the game.
It's pretty true, but I do think that's pretty interesting. Yeah, you have Steaming Sauna, and then your opponent's looking down the Roaring Furnace, being like, "Well, do I play anything that can block their
Right.
stuff? Because they can just blow it up and keep attacking. Like now, I'm just kind of screwed. It just feels like it puts a nail in the coffin, which is pretty interesting. Another thing we forgot to mention just throughout this entire experiment in this process is that at Common we have a land cycle we've never even mentioned on the show, but
Yes.
there is a common dual land cycle uh, that is really, really cool. Um, so it means that basically what I'm saying is that splashing will be a lot easier than it was in Bloomborough because we did not have this land cycle. And I think limited sets to me seem a little bit more interesting where there's splash ability, but not to the point where it's just like five color soup. And it's a
Yeah.
really fine line to like
I don't want
walk
splashing to be easy, but I don't want it to be too hard. I just want them
for
to get
like the
it right.
possible. Yeah.
You know, like,
And so all of these common lands are like of all the different color pairs, and they enter tapped unless a player has 13 or less life. Any player. That means any player at the table you're at, if you, the player next to you, you're on game one, but there are, or sorry, you're on game two, but they're still on game one. You get to play your land untapped. Um,
when I first read this, I was like, "Oh man, is this like awesome in Death Shadow?" And then I realized like, no, Death Shadow loses all its life because of its land. Like that, it really needs its lands to lose life. So
yeah,
like it's interesting in theory because they are so good at losing life, but this is just like an untapped duel. But they actually don't want untapped duels. They want shocklands. So,
yeah. To do all that stuff. It's funny because I was thinking, is this good in Popper?
mm,
But in Popper we don't have shocklands, so like you can't do
yeah.
it's almost like the exact opposite of that. Um, which I think it's possible in Popper to work with these, but I'm sure there's specific decks that would care about them. Anyway, splashing with these does seem possible, as well as Terramorphic Expanse is also in the set. So that's a good way to A, get a land into your graveyard for Delirium, and B, get that red mana you need for your Roaring Furnace. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's our pack zero pick one. Awesome, man. Always fun. I think this is such a great way to talk about limited, and it's so much fun to do it with you too because doing it by yourself is fun, but like being able to actually talk with somebody else about it is super
Yeah.
helpful. To be like, okay, we were both looking at the same kinds of cards. That's really nice. Um,
And then it's going to be some random cards that weren't even on either of our radars that are the best in
that
like three of these cards.
That's exactly what happens. And then you're
Yeah.
like, especially the ones where you're like, well, that one was as easy. Like, obviously, it's this. Like,
Yeah.
trapped screen, of course. Like, I don't
Of
need to look
course
at
it's
any other
Scorching
white
Dragon
cards.
Fire. Yeah.
And then it ends up being something else. That's super cool. And that's why we play Magic, because
Yeah.
why would you want it to be the same exact thing? Um, and that's why I like limited, because there's cards that you see a million times, and you're like, I think that it's like that card sucks. Like Mind Rot is always bad. But then every once in a while there's a format where it's like actually Mind Rot you can play and it's pretty good. And you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell? And it just
Way
I
to
just think
mess with
that's
me.
yeah, I just think that's really cool and it continues to prove that I am I don't know, always growing at Magic because I every time you think that you have everything figured out, that's when you're horribly wrong. And I just love it.
Yeah. So it keeps it interesting, right? The game is
Exactly.
too complicated to master. So.
Yes. Anyway, Jeff, do you have any last thoughts before we go to last call?
Uh yeah, I just wanted to say, like, in that vein, we introduced 17 lands earlier. Most of our, or a lot of our listeners will already know about it, but just in case you don't, the way that I like to use it is to play the format on my own without consulting it for like
Hmm.
2 weeks or whatever, just enough time to get some opinions on your own. But like, oh, what are the good colors? What are the good commons in those colors? Like, what's your favorite deck? And then it's always super interesting to then go and look at the 17 lands data and be like, wow, I thought this card was terrible and it's really good. Or, it confirms some things and it will like make you rethink other things. And I found that to be more effective than just like right away looking at the 17 lands data, like what's working and taking those cards highly, because it's just like when you get your own opinion first, you then understand the data better rather than just like blindly choosing what the
Hmm.
data tells you to choose. So
Exactly.
uh, that's the most effective way for me that I've found. So maybe that'll help you. Um, Not saying there's a right or wrong way to use data, right? Like probably it's objectively correct to just get it right away. But for me, it's like I need to like understand that I thought that card was bad and lose to it to a few times and start to understand why it doesn't suck and then see, oh, the data actually backs up that it's really good
Hmm.
before I'm going to be able to use that card effectively myself,
Hmm.
right? So
Totally. I think that makes
yeah,
sense.
I think it's a great tool and that's the way that I use it. Don't wait too long because you don't
Hmm.
want to be like the sucker who doesn't know the good card is good
It's like,
for
oh
too
wow,
long.
I shouldn't be playing black at all. I had no idea, you know.
Yeah. And that tends to happen more often these days with these websites that like, the information retrieval is so quick that
Hmm.
everyone else knows all of the information immediately. So
It's true.
if there's a weak color, everyone knows it.
Also, just don't let it ruin your life. Where like
Yeah.
if blue is unplayable, quote unquote, or like everybody's rushing away from it, like you can still play that color and try it and like capitalize on what people are rushing towards. Like, oh, the
It
best
might mean there's
colors
an
are
opportunity, right?
yeah, and that was true with the last format. It'll be true with more formats. It's something I have to constantly remind myself because I don't do that, you know.
It's more common that the worst color is still playable than it does happen, but it is less common that the worst color is just like you should never
Just
ever take it.
yeah, those are just like the worst formats we've had in Magic ever.
Yeah.
Um,
It has happened, but and it sucks.
yeah,
But like, yeah,
yeah,
don't take this color sucks as I can't draft it.
hmm yeah, yeah. So, but with that, Jeff, let's go to last call. Let's talk about this beer that we had this evening.
Let's do it.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited for it. As always, we rate our beers on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And it's just a fun way to rate beers. So don't take this too intensely. Like everyone's in different tiers at different times. Honestly, with the different events that they have and, the qualifier systems and people playing RCQs and everything, tiers don't matter as much as, you might think that they do. Just have a good time. Basically, the reason I'm saying this is because I don't want you to feel bad when I say that bronze beers are trash. They're horrible and they taste bad, and you have to spit them out and you pour them on the ground.
yeah.
They're
Silver
gross.
beers are basically just boring. So these are like poorly prepared macro brews or sorry, macro brews or
Hmm.
poorly prepared micro brews.
Yeah. Gold beers are fine, but you don't really think about drinking them.
Platinum is solid, and you would totally have it again.
Hmm. Diamond beers are exceptional. You like these a lot, and you share them with your friends, not just them.
Mythic, these are the best of the best. These are like the rooms in limited of the beer world.
Yes. Jeff, have you seen the movie The Room?
I've heard it's amazing. I haven't
Hmm.
had some time to check it out yet, but I've heard it really like makes you think,
Hmm. Yeah.
But misunderstood, I'd say is the word that
Yeah, for
like
sure,
people
for
just
sure.
don't get it.
Right.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm prepared for a lot of room jokes in this format, I think. Um, anyway, let's get into the I'm gonna say Leo Lager. Sorry, how do you pronounce his name again?
Leo.
Leo.
Yeah.
Leo
There's an
Lager.
accent on the E.
Yeah, but as an American, I just erase all accents and just say it the way that
It's a,
it looks, which is Leo.
it's
But
a
Leo Lager.
accent aigu.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I like this lager a lot. I thought this was great. I'm assuming this is one of the ones that you had tried.
Yes, so
Okay.
I do appreciate you going first because I had tried this
Hmm.
before. I knew what to expect. Um,
Yeah.
but I also did recommend we start with it for a reason.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
This lager reminds me of Hacker Shore so much. Like it this
Interesting.
this like it gave me like unfiltered lager vibes. It was a little cloudy, it was a little bit darker, and it had that I don't know, smooth sweetness as
Yeah, it's a
opposed to
little
like
sweet, right?
the like cool crispness that you usually associate with lagers, or sometimes a little bit of wheat with lagers. Um, but it made me like it a lot. I mean, I'm sure that the 6% leans into the smoothness also, but it was giving me a lot of Hacker Shore vibes, and that made me immediately be like, oh yeah, this is exactly why Jeff was like, we should start with this one. And
Yeah.
so it made me like it a lot, but it's really hard to put it on the scale.
Yeah.
So,
So it's interesting because I actually didn't necessarily make the connection to Hacker Shore, but as soon as I drank it, I was like, this is the type of lagers that we like
mhm,
on the show that we rate highly
yeah.
because it isn't just like clean crisp. It does have a little more to it, and the sweetness definitely comes through on it, but it wasn't too powerful. And so I thought it was great. And the fact that it's, you know, designed by a 6-year-old is pretty
Hmm.
impressive. That guy's
That's
got
true.
a kid's got a brewmaster career ahead of him.
It really does. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was now that you say Hacker Shore, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's the same thing. Like Hacker Shore is a
Yeah.
representation of the type of loggers that we like, and so is this one. But I just didn't make that like dotted line across those two things. Um, yeah, it's tough to rate as well, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and give this one diamond because
That's because,
fucking
like,
good. It's good beer.
yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that as we just I kind of outlined our rating system, as we've gone through the years, we made this rating system when we first started the podcast, and we've talked about it being flawed many times.
Yeah,
But this is exactly the kind of thing where it feels the most flawed because the lockers that we're talking about that we really like were part of a series called the Silver Series, which was bunch of silver beers,
yeah,
which inherently are silver and quote unquote bad. Um, but through that, there are certain ones that are just like rise way above. So maybe it's just like there's beers that feel like either it's silver and it's like, yeah, that's just like, okay, it's in every bar, or it's just like, no, this one's like diamond, but they almost skip the other ones.
yeah.
Like some of them hit platinum, but like high. But for the most part, it's like they're never gold,
No,
and they just like
definitely
skip
not gold.
straight above.
Yeah.
Um, because this is definitely a lager that I would recommend to people.
Oh yeah.
Like this is delicious and awesome and local and great.
Yeah. My only trepidation in like recommending it to people would be that often people who are looking for lagers are not looking for 6%. So I'd be like, it's a 6% if that's cool,
Hmm.
but it's awesome.
Yeah. There is also the sometimes like the lager people are looking for crisp and cold,
Right.
and this
I'd be like,
is
if you're a
less
lager
that.
guy who does not like the taste of lagers,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got something for you. Yeah.
So maybe it's some folks who like I don't know want to like lagers a little bit more, but they're or just are open to whatever beers as we are.
Yeah. And
But
I
this
think I
is
think it would pass as a lager too. Like it is a lager.
for
It
sure. I
just
could give
I
it to
like that it
people.
has a little more depth than that.
Yeah, it's just a bit more interesting. It doesn't have the same camping check of like, am I gonna drink these like eight of
Right.
these
Yeah.
it,
No,
all-
you know.
it, yeah, over like on a Saturday when I'm camping. Like no, Bud Light is like a nice.
Which is interesting because the brewery is a campsite. So their lager
That's
is not
true.
like a camping
Wait, that's
camping
hilarious.
lager.
I forgot about the campsite thing when I was
Yeah.
saying that. But to be fair, honestly, I still would do it.
I would do it. I was just
Yeah.
like, should I do it? But
Should I do it? Yeah.
yeah.
I like because most of the time when we're looking for those, yeah, we are looking for 4% or something that is
Yeah.
yeah, you can keep going throughout the day, but delicious beer.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe this is a nice camping beer for the fall as we're coming into it
Oh,
because you
yeah.
you want something that you can sip on, but you don't need ones that are the ice cold like it's so sweltering hot. I can't have sometimes you have beers that have so much flavor that they just don't feel cold anymore. And you're just like, I just want the coldest goddamn thing you could give me right now.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't really care. So that's when Corona comes in and that's when like Bud Light and stuff. And so yeah, as we come into fall, I think this is a fantastic camping beer.
I
Mm.
love how you talked specifically about cold beers and didn't mention Coors Light in your list.
Well, because Coors
It's
Light
literally their
sucks
whole
ass.
marketing campaign is that their beer is
Well,
cold.
because through the Silver Series, I realized that Coors is just the worst. It's really bad.
Well,
But
that's why their advertisements are, hey, our beer's really cold.
yeah.
They're like sitting in the team. The CEO's like, guys, we will not lie. And the marketing team's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? Like,
Yeah, like
I mean,
All right, I
See, the
guess
beer could be cold. That's not technically lying.
that's so funny because it's like at my restaurant, people always ask about the happy hour wines. They're like, what are the tasting notes on the Chardonnay?" I'm like, "It's cold."
Yeah,
And that I
it's happy hour Chardonnay.
it's $1 an ounce and it's cold. Like that's what it is. And they look
Yeah,
at me, they're like, "Okay, I get it." They're
I will
like,
take two.
"Yeah." And I'm like, "Perfect." I was like, "Is it like buttery? Is there oak in it?" I was like, "It's no. Don't even get your mind away from there. Like this
If you're
is
even asking those questions, I don't think you want
yeah, just get a margarita. You're gonna be so much
it.
happier with that." Anyway, Jeff, let's go to closing time.
Let's do it.
As always, you can reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You may also find us on Arena itself if we're ever able to download the update. We would be under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is ZULBERG on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place is on our Discord channel. I go by Regular Jeff on the Discord. It's a great place to come talk about new cards, new sets, and new decks. We love that most. So please come share your deck picks. And yeah, the link for that is down below in the show notes.
That's right. Also, in our Discord, we love when you bombard us with the trophies that you're getting with all your draft decks and sending pics of those as well, and making me particularly feel sad that I'm not
We had
making.
some heavy hitters in the past
We,
sets. So.
yeah, we've had one person in our Discord specifically has been getting a million trophies, and I'm not going to say I'm super jealous. I'm just a little bit jealous, just a tiny bit. Just like this
I'm
is
jealous. I didn't
smidge.
even play the format.
I know you don't even know any of the cards we were talking about with
Yeah.
Bloomberg today. Anyway, please leave us a review at Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, leave us a review there as well. Go to YouTube, give us a little comment, anything that just says, "Hey, your stuff is in my life." It's just a nice reminder that there's somebody else on the other side of these microphones. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you to go fill out your Pack Zero Pick Ones, man. Like it's a super fun way to engage with a new format, especially if you love draft.
Good night.
All right, that's fine.